Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. Here on American Voices, we celebrate all that this country has to offer. So after hearing about people's life stories, we also want to celebrate the land. So each week, we invite authors to talk about a favorite place or sound in the country. This time, Neil King is back. He's the former writer for the Wall Street Journal, and he's the founder of Gotham Canoe, an online magazine celebrating the outdoors. Here's Neil King.
This is Neil King, and my favorite sounds are crickets. There's something satisfying about the trill or the kind of just hum of crickets, particularly at night, because they speak so directly to summer, and they have that kind of continuum quality about them that also, for many of us, I think, reminds you of your childhood. In my case, I have a lot of memories of being in my room at night when I was very young and reading a book, and outside the window of my bedroom being able to hear the sound of crickets. In this case, I grew up in Colorado, and it's just one of those sounds that just not just stay with you, but sort of speak to you. They become, seasonal markers. The sort of audio seasonal markers are very profound ones. And sometimes, of course, in the case of insects or frogs or other things like that, we may never see the thing that we're hearing, but they certainly give an impression all the same. I think summer generally connotes a happy time. That was certainly the case for me. So I think to the extent that crickets kind of capture the essence of summer, it's also that feeling of elongated time. And we all know that's not really the case. And there is something very ephemeral about summer all the same. But it's more of a cumulative thing that doesn't necessarily, I feel in some ways similarly appreciative of the summers I'm granted now. So it's not as if, the summers that I look back on in some previous time were somehow superior summers than the summers I experience now. I guess I revel more in the magnitude of the present than I, dredge up a lot of nostalgia for some earlier time in my life. When you hear the final cricket sounds in the late fall, and then finally they just go away altogether, it's the ultimate sign that that summer, the warm stretch has ended and winter is on its way. And if I had to pick a season that was my favorite season, I think it would probably be fall. But I don't, as a result, look at it with some mourning. It's more just a very strong sign of the passage from one portion of the year into another. I definitely appreciate the cycles and really witnessing the seasons and their kind of coming and going aspect. I went through this whole episode a couple of years ago where I had gone through this kind of difficult cancer phase, and I had to go to the same hospital many, many, many times. And I became kind of obsessed by this one particular incredible elm tree. And every time I went there, I would see it in its current state. And trees are so emblematic of the seasonal moment. And I had a whole series of photos that I took of this one tree because it just, every time I went, particularly if I was going monthly for a scan or whatever kind of treatment, the tree would be in many ways dramatically different. And it was just fascinating to not only watch the seasons go on through that tree, but just to celebrate the motion and the kind of revival cycles that a tree represents. And I'd be there in the summer with, when it was just, it's a huge elm tree too. And it was just in the full leaf stage. And then, to go back in the entirely opposite time of year when it's just like arteries and veins of limbs, and, to see it in every other phase in between. It was just a fantastic thing to be able to watch. And then when you're kind of looking for your own revival and feel, it being beaten down and then being sort of brought back to life, it's a nice thing to kind of see your own cycle in the cycle of a tree like that. And there's a hopeful side to it. I mean, I have to, when you have to go back to be checked yet again. And so I always go back to see this tree. It's not as resonant as it was when I was in the thick of things because I feel safer now and I feel less threatened. That's a very fascinating subject about whether there's a richness that's given by the concern that your horizon may be a lot shorter, and then once your horizon lengthens again and you become a little bit more presumptuous about having a year or 2 years or 4 years or 10 years, then, some of that richness is kind of lost. It's a strange exchange that goes on. So to that extent, when I go see that elm tree now, I appreciate it, but not with the same kind of depth that I felt when I was more in the thick of all that. For whatever reason, I've just developed a stronger sense of and an appreciation of the cycle, the seasonal cycle. And the crickets are so emblematic of that. And, this particular elm tree that I became rather attached to was, in a different but similar way, such a profound illustration of that seasonal cycle.
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.